is to push this a little further, if you had to steelman this version of deism, how would you go about doing that?
So you mean if I was going to pick one and argue for it?
Yes.
Well, Um, so I don't know. Um, I think that in some sense, it feels like it's going to be more challenging to argue for a thicker version than a thinner one. And so if I want to kind of, it's a debate and I want to score points, I'll be much better going with something like Malbon's view than some view that's got lots and lots and lots of commitments. On the other hand, um, if we're thinking about, it depends who's in the audience, right? If we're thinking about wanting to win a debate, um, and the people in the audience are inclined to take sympathetic views about a whole range of evidence, then maybe you're better off. It's going to seem to them like it's better if you argue for some virtue, of evidence.
Yeah. So at bottom, it's really about the kind of explanatory power and parsimony of these models, and so
Yeah, so that,
whatever
me
has
it
the
is.
best.
Yeah. And, but as we've kind of discussed along the way, we won't even agree about what the evidence is. I mean, my preferred idea is whatever's controversial between us is theory, but the evidence is just the stuff we agree about. That's what we've got to explain. I don't
Yeah.
mean,
There's, of course, the juicy question about the principle of sufficient reason, which you had briefly touched on before, but I suppose we can say for another time.
I said earlier that I think that there's a kind of acceptable version of the principle of sufficient reason that goes like this: everything has an explanation except the contrast of stuff in deterministic causation. Uh, um, because that can't have an explanation, but it seems to me everything else can.
Hmm. And now I have one parting question, more on the personal level. What kind of evidence, whether we are talking about, the kind of, arguments at the theoretical level or, on the subjective level, would it take for you to become convinced that theism is true?
Right. So Hume famously talked about the voice from the sky. I've been thinking about something much more modest than that. Would be kind of interesting. So suppose we're digging around in some site where there's a civilization from the middle of the first century, and we find some documentation, and we're very sure that it's authentic. And on one of the pages in the middle, there's this stuff in Times New Roman, and it says in 2026, Arsenal will finish second to Manchester City in the English Premier League. What the hell are we going to make of that? I mean, right now, we don't know whether that's true or not, by the way. But how could anybody in the first century have had any knowledge of the Champions League, Arsenal, City, and so on? Uh, Something really weird is going on here. It's very hard to know what to make of it. It doesn't. It doesn't immediately look like this might be evidence for the existence of God, but it could be.
Yeah, I immediately think of the internal prophecies of the Old Testament and the New, which is a whole conversation unto itself. But there is a fascinating idea about the kind of highly improbable.